Welcome back to Talking with Teri TV. And on today's special guest of our Business Spotlight, we have a fabulous guest coming straight to us from Dallas, Texas. This is Larry Roberts with Red Hat Media. I'm super excited to be jumping in with him. He is creating innovative AI integration, revolutionizing brand narratives. All right, so let's jump in here. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I'm excited to jump in here. And obviously, one of the distinct factors about you is your red hat. So I got to know, is there a little backstory to the red hat?
Yes, there is a backstory. I became the Red Hat guy. It's probably been about 2.5 years. It hadn't been that long since the Red Hat became the forefront of everything that I do. But if you look behind me here on one of the pedestals of my background, there is a red ball cap that's a Supreme ball cap. Supreme is a lifestyle brand. And I was doing a talk at the Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. And it was a younger audience. We were talking about content creation. So I was trying to connect on a branded level, right? So I wore the Supreme hat, just trying to be cool. And I came down after my talk, and a good friend of mine who was also a speaker, we give each other a hard time whenever we speak because we tend to run into each other all the time. And he goes, "But seriously, why are you wearing that Supreme hat?" And I told him, just trying to connect. He goes, "Yeah, well, that's cool, but are they paying you?" And I was like, "Well, bro, I'm 49. They'd probably pay me not to wear it, in all honesty." So he goes, "Well, then don't wear their merch on stage. Wear your own merch on stage." He goes, "But I love the fact that it's red because although you can't tell from here, I'm about 6'3" and about 240 ish, and so I'm a big guy." And that red hat on top of my head, it's like a beacon. So he goes, "Dude, I can see you all the way across the arena." So it really resonated with me. I came home, I tossed the Supreme hat to the side, bought a $6 unbranded red hat, gave it 5-degree little tilt to the right, and the red hat guy was born. So it just instantly took over as my brand and instantly started providing brand recognition within the podcast and the content creation space. And after about 6 months, I realized exactly how powerful it was because strangers were coming up to me going, are you the podcast guy?" And I'm like, "How do you know?" And they go, "Well, the red hat. We know the red hat guy is podcasting." I'm like, "Oh my God." So I changed my
Yes.
business name. I changed everything. And the red hat was born.
I love it. I love it. Well, very similar. I started out wearing a pink scarf and then it became this whole thing. And now I wear only hot pink dresses when I speak.
Yep.
And so now it's the same thing. If I am not wearing a hot pink dress, people are like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yes, like I'm okay. Are you okay that I'm not wearing pink?" But I'm the same way. Like people know, and I'm
They
branded
look
with
for it. They
pink
expect
dresses.
it.
Yeah, they look for it and expect
It's
it.
the
And
craziest thing because sometimes when I'm at conferences and I need a little Larry time, I have to take the hat off just so that
yeah.
I can blend in because they don't recognize me without that hat.
Love
So
it. I love it. That's
it's
brilliant. It's
hilarious,
brilliant. Well,
honestly.
when we're talking about branding, I mean, this is key stuff. But
Yeah.
we are not going to be talking specifically branding. We're going to be talking about a little ancillary, but you have become really this go-to expert with AI. My producer, Mary, met you at an event just recently, and she's like, "I just love his personality. I love how he's talking about," and you and I connected, and I'm like, "Yes, let's highlight this because I think so many entrepreneurs and business owners is out there. Now, there's a lot of people that have tiptoed in and started playing with some of these AI tools. But I'd love to do a little deep dive with you today, just talking about how do we leverage these AI tools to our advantage and really work smarter, not harder, and working with them more efficiently
Yeah.
to leverage more time in our business for that reason.
There are so many different tools out there that are leveraging AI, whether you're producing content or whether you're copywriting or whether you're using it to generate images. There's opportunities to leverage AI across the board, depending on where your niche is and where your business is going. I tend to stick primarily with ChatGPT and another one called Claude. I love Claude because what we hear a lot of times are business owners, they try to use these AI tools and the content they get back is very generic. It's very bland. It's very AI. And that's the biggest struggle that people have. And honestly, that's one of the reasons that I love Claude so much because with just a minimal amount of tweaking and just the slightest touch to our prompts, we can get some really, really good stuff back. But we can do the exact same thing on the ChatGPT side and really have it sounding just like us, using our brand voice, using our terminology, using our pacing, our tone, every aspect of our voice. We can teach ChatGPT to sound exactly like us. And that's one of the first things that I like to help my clients do is get their account or their ChatGPT, their chatbot set up to sound just like them. And once you do that, you're going to find that the content you create much more effective, much more human, and again, just as a direct reflection of you and your brand voice.
And I love this, and I'd love you to unpack that quickly on how you can do that, because when you and I spoke the other day, I'm going to admit I did not know this. I did not know it. I mean, I knew you had to prime it and you had to blah 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 and da, 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 but I didn't realize there was a setting that
Yeah,
we really I have been missing the mark on
yeah.
really leveraging those settings. So just really briefly kind of tell what people where those settings are and how we can, craft that to really, like you said, hone into our message and our the way we talk so that it is coming across that way. So we don't feel like, copy and paste and then rework it again.
Yeah. Again, you can always tell most of the time you can tell AI generated content because it's got things like delve. We're going to delve into this, or we're going to take a deep dive, or we're going to go on a journey. And those are key indicators that that's AI generated content. Because I don't know about you, but I never used the word delve until ChatGPT came out in November of 2022. But prior to that, delve was not in my vocabulary, and I don't think in most people's vocabulary either. So what we have to do is we have to dial it back a little bit, and we have to teach these tools who we are and what we do and how we do it. And with ChatGPT, there is a setting, and the setting you're referring to is called custom instructions. And I tell you what I'll do, because prior to the call, I opened up a couple of web browsers. I'm just going to share my screen, and it's hard to kind of explain where to go to
Yeah.
do this, but it's
Yep.
much easier to show. And we're in ChatGPT now, so this is what most ChatGPT sessions or windows are going to look like. I like to use the dark version because it just hurts my fragile little eyes if it's on the light version. So, but once you log on, you're going to have your account information up here in the top right hand corner. Just click on your profile picture and you'll come down here to customize ChatGPT. And once we're in here, we're going to see these two text boxes. There's one at the top and this one here down at the bottom. And each of these allow you up to 1,500 characters, not words, but characters to describe in this top box. This asks, what would you like ChatGPT to know about you to provide better responses? And in this text box right here, you have the opportunity to tell ChatGPT all about who you are, what you do, what your communication style is, and a variety of other things about you, whatever you think is relevant. Now, what I've done is I've come up with a set of variables that I use in both of these text boxes. Now, once we get this one figured out up top, we come down here to the bottom one, and it tells you how would you like ChatGPT to respond. This is where you tell ChatGPT, I like summaries, or I like bullet points, and I like it in English, and I like very concise. Another set of variables are very applicable down here. And I've actually using these same variables in the top and the bottom. I've created over 350 different personas that you can
Wow.
all use here in ChatGPT. Now, what typically happens, and I'm going to continue to
I
share my
just love Robert, or I love Larry, that you put in here, do not use the word delve.
see,
I
it's just
saw, I saw that in there. I'm like, that's hysterical.
yeah, it frustrates me when I see that one. So, one of the other cool things we can do too is when you're using ChatGPT outside of these custom instructions, if you specifically tell it to remember something, you'll see memory updated. You'll see a little note that says memory updated, and it'll show you that ChatGPT is remembering what you told it to remember. So that's kind of a cool deal.
That's
And
fascinating.
yeah, it's super, super cool. If we come over here to a presentation that I typically use for this, here are each of the variables that we have for both of those text boxes. This one over here on the
Okay.
right is for that top, or the left is for that top text box, and the one over here on the right is for the bottom text box. And actually, I can send you this as well. Here's an
Perfect.
example of a persona with each of those variables filled out. And what you can do, or your listeners can do, is they can take these variables, change out this text, and create their own persona, remembering to stay within those 1,500 characters, though. Once you have these established, copy them, paste them into ChatGPT, and you're good to go.
Love
You
it.
no
And then you
longer
can always, obviously, you can save that as a Word document and have it different. Like you said, you have over
100%.
350 of these.
I
So,
actually use 4 on a regular basis. I have
okay,
4
gotcha.
different ones. Depending on what I'm doing and the content that I'm creating, I'll copy and paste in that persona that I want to use for those particular projects.
I love it. Yes. And especially for those that are using that are coaches or you're working with other clients, you may have ones that are designed specifically for that client that you're working with as well. So that is gold, by the way. That is just gold. And I love the fact that you're willing to share that in the show notes as well.
Sure.
Uh, so jumping into some of your best tips. What are some of your best tips for utilizing, AI into leveraging our energy, resources, and time?
Yeah, and you kind of hit the nail on the head there. And one of the things we have to really do is we have to tell these tools how we want them to respond. So we have to set the tone. Think about some of your personality traits. What are your personality traits? Are you bold? Are you professional? Are you funny? What are some of the characteristics of the type of content that you create? Write those down and include those in those custom instructions and tell ChatGPT exactly what your personality is. You also have to talk about things like the pacing. Do you like to get right to the point, or do you like to kind of draw it out with a story? Are you more narrative in your approach with your content? What are you writing, and how do you want that to be consumed? Same thing with, like, if you have say a catchphrase for your brand, or like, we build better brands through podcast is our catchphrase. So if you have something like that, then tell ChatGPT what that phrase is, and it will work that into the content that you're creating on a regular basis.
Love
Uh,
it.
if you are funny, and this is things get a little tricky here because AI still struggles with humor quite a bit, unless they're dad jokes. It does a tremendous job at writing dad jokes, but understanding different styles of humor can be a bit of a challenge. But if you want to weave some of that personality in there, tell it your humor style. Are you kind of witty? Do you like sarcasm? Do you
Mhm.
whatever it may be? You have to communicate with the tools, and that communication is applicable across the board. If you're writing a prompt and it gives you a response back and you're not real happy with that response, tell it, and tell it
Yeah.
why you're not happy with that response. Give it feedback, because it uses something called NLP, or natural language processing. So we're literally having a natural language conversation with these tools.
Mhm.
And many times, especially brand new users, get on there and they're a little intimidated because they're talking to a robot. So they figure they got to do robot language or something along. No, you can just use your same language, your common phrases, the common topics that you use. Tell it these things and communicate back and forth. It's an ongoing process with your new friend, these chat,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
have to communicate. Something else that's absolutely critical. I like to refer to these tools as brilliant toddlers, because they have all of the information you could possibly want them to have, but they don't have context. So we
Got
have
it.
to be
Mhm.
very, very detailed in the prompts that we give it. And that's where I see a lot of people coming up short and not really enjoying interacting with these tools, because they make assumptions, or they assume that the chatbot knows what they want. Because you and I, if we're standing face to face, we can have a conversation, and I don't have to be explicit in that conversation. You can make informed assumptions based on my body language, based on my facial expression, based on eye contact. Well, we can't have those assumptions built into this communication, so we have to tell it everything.
So I know that you have your top 10 tips.
We'll actually go through all 10 real quick. Tip number one, this is kind of where we were at a second ago. Define your voice and tone. Again, if you're friendly, look at your personality traits, make a note of those, and tell ChatGPT exactly what those are. Next one, this goes back to kind of the brilliant toddler analogy I was talking about. Provide detailed examples. If you have examples of content that you've actually written, if you have emails or blogs or social media, give those to ChatGPT as an example. And something to keep in mind here, it's not necessarily giving it tons of data, but it's giving it a variety of data, because we're going to talk differently, or we're going to write differently based on the content that we're creating. So,
Right.
email may be very professional. I may be trying to make a sale or something, so I'm conducting myself in a certain kind of way. Giving an example of a professional email is great. A blog post, depending on your blog, may have a different level of emotional connectivity that's in there. So give it that example as well. Social media might be fun, might be kind of humorous, who knows? But it's probably, once again, a little different approach to how you're writing. So giving all three of these and giving ChatGPT an idea of your different approaches to different types of content will give it an idea of how to send content back to you.
Perfect.
Number three, use a specific vocabulary. This kind of goes back to if you have a catchphrase or keywords that you use. I tend to use the word cat daddy all the time. I mean, it is a cat daddy hat that I'm wearing right here. I mean, if it's cool, it's cat daddy to me. So I use cat
Yeah,
daddy in a lot of my content. And I tell ChatGPT, this is one of my favorite phrases. Integrate that into the content that we're creating, and it'll do it for you.
perfect.
Set clear structure preferences. So if you like your content to come back to you from ChatGPT or any of these tools in a bullet point format or in a numbered format or in summaries, or if you want really detailed information, let it know exactly how you want that content to come out. That way it knows exactly how to structure those responses. Touch base on this one too, just a hint. Humor again, it's going to struggle a little bit, but with some communication, coming back to ChatGPT, going, I don't really know why that was funny. Can you help me understand that? Can we do a little better? Just have that chat, and you'll eventually get it dialed in a little bit
And
there.
I'm assuming with that humor, you could probably pull from like, hey, my humor is a combination style of, this
one Hundred
person, and this
percent.
person, or something like that. So it
When
can
I'm doing
learn
my
it.
ad copy, if I'm writing an ad or if I'm actually writing a social media post, I typically tell ChatGPT to give me a response back in the structure of a combined voice of, and you may or may not know who these people are. Alex Hormozy, big influencer, he's big in the space. Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and,
Gary
and
Vee.
yeah, and Grant Cardone. So I mix all three of those in, and then it sounds kind of like how I typically
I
talk
love it.
a
Yeah,
little bit, and off we go.
there
So
we
that
go.
works out really, really well. Tip number six, your preferred pacing. Do you like to get straight to the point, or do you like to have a little intrigue along the way before you build up and have that delivery? Let it know exactly where you're at there. This one's kind of cool too, especially if you're a business owner and you're wanting to reflect your key values and your key principles in the content that you're creating for your business. Let it know exactly what those are so that it can format the data in a way that comes back and reflects those key values and those key principles. Communication style, this is absolutely critical also. Are you conversational, kind of like you and I are right now,
Yeah.
and like I said
Mhm.
before with the NLP, the natural language processing? Maybe it's narrative, maybe you're a storyteller and you really want to draw that story out and really draw the attention of your audience in. Are you instructional? I know when I'm standing in front of an audience and I'm instructing them on how to do something, I put on my corporate trainer hat. I go back to my corporate days where I'm just, this is how we do it, and these are the, if that's
Right.
who you are, great, but that's how you want your content. Or are you a storyteller? I mean, storytelling it's the key of everything today. If you're anywhere doing anything with your brand, everybody's talking about, well, what's the brand story? What's the story of your brand? What's the story of your brand voice? Storytelling is huge. So if you want to leverage that, once again, absolutely critical that we tell it that's what we're after. Identify common themes and topics. If you're constantly talking about branding, talking about digital marketing or personal development, whatever your niche is. So this is applicable. It doesn't have to be anything in this arena here that I've got on the slide, but regardless of what your niche is, tell ChatGPT what that niche is so it understands to structure the content in a way that's going to resonate with your natural audience in your niche. And then number 10 to round it out, this one's absolutely critical. Give feedback on a regular basis. This is where a lot of people drop the ball because they get content back and they go, this is garbage. I don't like this. This sounds so okay. Well, tell it that it's garbage. Say, ChatGPT, this sucked. And this is
Yeah.
why it sucks. So help me write something better and have that communication back and forth with whatever tool you're using. Of course, I'm saying
Yeah.
ChatGPT, but it works with any chatbot that you use out there. So those are my top 10 tips. We went through them really, really quick. I know we have
Yeah.
a very limited amount of time. Typically, I elaborate a little bit more, but we can also include all 10 of these tips in the show notes and answer any
Perfect.
question that your audience may have that way.
Love it. I love it. Well, let me ask you this. Like what do you what disclaimers do we need to be aware of, and like how and when do we need to use those? Because I
Yeah,
think, that we're incorporating more AI, like, there's certain things that the email doesn't need to be that, but like, what are the situations that we really should be mindful of using a disclaimer?
yeah. I mean, one of the first and foremost, if you look behind me here, here's my book. It's called Under the Red Hat. It's all about branding and why the red hat exists. And I wrote it with ChatGPT. And I did it for a reason. I did it, well, one, because I flew out to San Diego and did a talk with an organization called Entrepreneurs Organization, and came off stage, and everybody's like, "Oh, cool talk, that'd be great. I'd love to buy your book." I didn't have a book. mean, I have a book on podcasting, but they're not going to want
Right.
that. I don't have a book
Yeah.
on AI.
Yeah.
Another talk like 3 weeks later. So I'm like, holy crap, I cannot be exposed like this again. So I ran home and I cried a little bit. And then I went, well, dude, you're the AI guy, right? So write it with AI. So I wrote the entire book and had it published in about 3 weeks. I was ready. I had books in hand at my next talk.
Wow.
If you open the book, the very first page in the book is a disclaimer that says this book was written with AI, except for chapter 3. I wrote that one all by myself because it's the story of the red hat. It doesn't know me, it doesn't
Yeah.
know my story. And so I felt you're not obligated to do that, but at the same time, I felt obligated because I want people to know that although it sounds like me, it's in my brand voice and the word cat daddy's in there a couple times, that it was still written with AI. So in that regard, I think you have to have that disclaimer there. So,
Yeah.
and it's getting to where the AI detectors, they're coming up with new technology that's going to eventually be able to identify AI driven content right out of the gate. There's quote unquote AI detectors that are out there now, but they're not reliable. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the ones that are out there now said that the Declaration of Independence was AI written, and I don't think they had AI back then. So you can't rely on those detectors, but they
Right.
are coming up with new methodologies all the time. So
Yeah.
something else to keep in mind is with IP, can we copyright this stuff?
Yeah.
Now, my book, I published it in KDP, which is Amazon's self-publishing platform, and there's a copyright there. But if you look at the Copyright and Patent Office here in the United States, they have stated that in order to copyright anything that's AI generated, there has to be some level of human involvement. And as it sits right now, that some has not been clearly defined. And there aren't many cases that are out there right now that really set any precedents. So
Yeah.
I say disclose it regardless of what you're doing and understand that right now, any AI created content, you're going to have a very difficult time getting a copyright or a patent on that, at least at the government level. So
Right.
just keep
Right.
that in mind at all times.
Yeah. And even just like Amazon bestseller and things like that, I think they have some stipulations. And I think that's going to evolve and grow. Like you said, there's not been a precedent set. So we're in that place of figuring that out right now. So
Yeah,
very
and you're
life.
right. Amazon does ask if your book that you're publishing, is there any, and they mean any. Did you use AI to generate the cover? Did you use AI to generate any content? They want you to disclose that. So you do have to check that box when you're publishing. And keep in mind, too, that and while this book was not written to be a bestseller by any stretch of the imagination, you could still be an Amazon #1 bestseller, but you're not going to get on the real Amazon bestsellers top 10 list, right? And I
Oh,
say,
I see. There's like, I didn't realize there was like two separate, like,
well, a lot of people use the Amazon bestseller because using a little, you can gamify the system a bit, and I can turn anybody to an Amazon #1 bestseller in categories. But in the
gotcha.
overall list that they manage, you're never going to
Yeah.
hit a list. You're never
Gotcha.
going to get on a Wall Street Journal bestseller or a New York Times bestseller or even
Fair.
the
Yeah.
actual Amazon bestseller. But you can still get that category bestseller, and you can still get that gold seal on your book if you want it and say, I'm
Yeah.
an Amazon #1 bestseller.
Gotcha. I love this. Well, this has been so yummy, and I hope that the listeners that are they're tuning in, listening to this, that you got just a one piece of a new information, new nugget. I know I did when I heard just having a quick conversation with you. So, and I actually jotted down another note from today. So, so
Good.
juicy. So let me just, final thoughts. Anything that you want to share with the audience before we wrap up here?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Right now, I'm already hearing people talk about how the whole AI fad has essentially come and gone, and the dust has settled with AI, and we're not as impressed with it as we were 2 years ago. The shine has worn off, but we need to keep in mind that, in all honesty, we're just getting started. Okay,
Yeah.
we're barely 2 years into this revolution that we're all experiencing, and honestly, there is a 5-step roadmap that's underway for the future of AI. And people think that we're already halfway through that thing, if not further. We're really still just at step one.
Yeah.
We're just
Yeah.
at step one. And how long is it going to take us to go from step one to like AGI or artificial general intelligence? That's step 5.
Yeah.
I don't know. And nobody can tell us at this stage of the game. Is it 5, 10, 50 years down the road? One of the biggest challenges we have is the energy to process artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of these larger companies are struggling with right now is the energy resources necessary to process this AI. And that's one of the biggest challenges in the development of the technology itself. So
Yeah.
we got to keep that in mind. AI, still brand new. You need to embrace it, integrate it into your everyday life. You're going to, whether you realize it or not. Most of us are already using it to a certain degree, but leverage it, make your products more efficient, more effective, and really use it to get in touch with your audience on a higher level.
Yeah, it's really powerful. I just was reading an article not too long ago, and it was saying that utilizing AI, we've been collapsing time. And I think what was it? It was something like in the next year, we're going to collapse about 100 years worth of evolution and development into 1 year. And
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. And then that's just going to exponentially, grow. And I mean, it's just amazing to think about, where we're at, and, how cool is it that we get to be a part of this path to,
Yeah.
creating more impact. And hopefully at some point, I joke that we're gonna get to Toontown, and Toontown is where everything, we're gonna all be on vacation and just loving life, because, the robots have, are
Yeah.
doing
We
the
got
work
them
that
doing
we don't
everything
want
for
to
us.
do. And we can really stay in our zone of genius of what our true gifts are to this world, and everything else can be just a little bit easier. We can breathe a little bit better. So
100%. I mean, look at the Jetsons. They predicted everything we're doing today in the
I
Jetsons.
know, I just saw something like that, and I was just like, wow, true. Like, it really is
They
pretty,
did
pretty
everything
wild. Yeah.
100%.
Look at those
So
master manifestors at that time. Like, look at them speaking into life. We're going to make this world more efficient. I love it. Oh my goodness. Larry, this has been absolutely delightful. You obviously are a true champion of AI, and I love the work that you're doing. Where can people connect with you and collaborate with you further on, or the other projects, or your podcast?
yeah, you can find me at larryroberts.com. I try to keep everything super simple. If you want to reach out to me on social media, I primarily, because I'm 52, so I hang out with all the old people on Facebook. So I'm on Facebook a lot, and I'm over on LinkedIn. Super easy to find on both the Larry Roberts, and I'm on IG too. I just don't post there very often. So all
Okay.
three of those, it's the Larry Roberts. Please reach out, connect. I'd love to hear from you.
I love it. Awesome. Thank you, Larry. And we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.